I made a mistake earlier today. It's an important one, and I want to talk about it. Construction back on the High Line, so I guess we're going this way. It wasn't important from the standpoint of like, oh my God, this is a huge, irreparable mistake that's going to impact the outcome of so many things. It was important because it keys into a major problem that I think a lot of people are experiencing. Everybody is very curious about what went on in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, who exactly was involved in this assassination attempt against Trump. Gunfire coming from places. I mean, we've got eyewitness testimony from people who were there 5 minutes after it happened saying, there was a guy in the water tower, 2 or 3 people. Somebody sent me earlier today on X, and if you aren't following on X, I really do encourage it. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of interaction, a lot of things being posted there. People can find me there at JG_CSTT. Somebody had sent to me the longer version of that woman in the red MAGA hat who said they shot the gentleman in the water tower. So red MAGA hat lady, she went into a whole lengthy description about how one shooter was shooting this way and the sharpshooters shot the guy in the water tower and that they were worried that there might be another shooter and that was why they evacuated everybody. This is what this lady said. It was a lengthy interview. The only clip of that I had seen was the one that John Cullen pulled from somebody. It looked to me like they were recording it with their cell phone off the television. So they're watching at home, it's playing on the television, their camera and microphone on their cell phone are recording what's playing on their television, and it's true. We get an image of what this lady is saying. We hear her. So that is a video, and it is evidence. We hear her eyewitness testimony. I get it, why people want to do that. But there's some problems with doing that. And I wanted to talk about evidence and leads and contradictory and confusing evidence and social engineering, because there's a lot of people who want to inject bad evidence and fool us so that we can't figure out what really happened. And then there's also a lot of people who want to tell you that I or people who come onto Crowdsource the Truth, whoever it might be, that we're lying, that we're doing things just to make money and get clicks. People can say whatever they want. That's simply not true. I have never deliberately lied to the Crowdsource the Truth audience. I've been wrong, like today, but I've never come on here and concocted some scheme to tell people a false thing for some ulterior purpose or to just try to make money. I mean, I guarantee if I just wanted to make money, I wouldn't be putting my neck on the line with these, politically controversial and just people know that the stuff that I talk about, most people hate. And what I could have done is started a company similar to my old company, 21st Century 3D, was a business to business, essentially when it started out, corporate video production company. I could have started, live stream NYC and bring in a bunch of equipment for corporate events, like I did with Larry Klayman. I helped him set up his 5-camera live stream shoot for his Continental Congress. I was thinking about that. I mean, to go to Philadelphia and hire someone to do a switched live streaming multi-camera shoot, I have no idea what that would cost. I never priced it out, but it strikes me as the type of thing that might be cheap if it was $100,000. So if I just wanted money, I would use my skills to create a business like that, where I would keep my head down, not express my personal opinions, not express my controversial views of events that shape everybody's lives and change the way we think about the country and the world and what's going on around us. So now we've got a problem that maybe a month ago, I don't know that I had ever seen a homeless person on the High Line, and now we have 2. That's interesting. But I can assure you that I'm doing this because the subjects that we talk about intrigue me And because in around 2016, I got to a point in my life where my once lucrative stereoscopic motion picture production company wasn't really a viable business anymore, because after 2013 and X-Men and everything, the 3D, people don't really watch 3D movies anymore. So it's like making buggy whips and somebody invented the car. I needed to do something else. But the point is, I'm doing this because I felt that the country was going in the wrong direction, and perhaps I detected that too late. Maybe people like Charles Ortel, he was looking at the Clinton Foundation way before I ever met him. And for people who have just started following Crowdsource the Truth, I know a lot of people are very interested in the assassination. We've been covering it a lot with John Cullen and Lee Stranahan. I've been talking about David Hawkins' reverse CSI methods. It's very instructive. Crowdsource the Truth. Look, even if it ended tomorrow, which I hope it doesn't, it's been an important part of my life. I've learned a lot, met a lot of interesting people. I really appreciate everybody who's been sponsoring the show. So that's the thing. People are accusing me of putting out this tweet for clicks. And I didn't delete it because someone corrected me. Someone saw it and said, oh, this is wrong for this reason. And I hadn't thought of what this person said, and I contemplated it, and I said, oh, that makes a lot more sense and seems to be the correct answer than what I had previously thought. So I put as many tweets all over that as I could to say that. I clicked on the correct request community note button on my own tweet, and I'm making this video to explain to everyone why it is wrong, how I got it wrong, how I figured out from this person's message that it was wrong, why that was helpful, and why making mistakes is part of this process. John Cullen commented and reminded me of something that is a play on what we've heard Elon Musk say, and I'm sure he didn't invent this, but Elon Musk's version of it, well, John Cullen said if we don't have some false positives, then we're not looking hard enough. And he's correct. I'm going to explain why I was looking where I was looking, and that goes to David Hawkins and all these other things. But what Elon Musk says is, and I like this from an engineering standpoint, I'm not making any kind of comment on my personal feelings about Elon Musk, but I think he's got some very interesting processes from an engineering standpoint, even for the people that say he never invented anything, the government gave him all his money or whatever. What he's written in his book, or what Walter Isaacson has written in his book from the standpoint of managing a team of engineers, in my view, is inarguably good advice. He's talking about his essential sort of theory that the best part in a machine is no part. And what he means is, if you're busy designing some complicated mechanism for a door, and the part is expensive, and then you start thinking, how can we reduce the... Maybe you just need to eliminate that door and eliminate the whole entire mechanism and have some other way of doing what it is that mechanism is trying to actuate. And if you come up with a great idea that eliminates 14 parts and makes it do exactly what you need it to do, that's a better way. So you could say, oh, this engineer made a mistake and designed these, 12 parts that we don't need. Okay, but now we learned something from that. And so let's talk about this tweet. Earlier this morning, I put up a tweet. Forgive me, maybe back up. Why was I looking at this? Well, very recently, like within the last week, I've begun to notice, and I've been talking about it, which I think is helping a lot of other people notice, and people are noticing on their own, but it's just remarkable how we're seeing such low quality videos from this event. It basically started with this unsteady David Stewart. I really dislike this person, and I'm incredibly suspicious of him because he strikes me as a newly minted social engineer, and he's not that good at it yet. And I believe I've caught him sort of right in the act. I could be wrong. People should remember that. The things that I'm sharing here on Crowdsource the Truth are my opinions based on facts, evidence, information, things that I see in the public domain. You might look at those same exact things and come to a different conclusion. This is not nonsense when I'm saying this. And people say, why does Jason say that all the time? Because not everybody watches every video. And when I say things, that then get transcribed into frivolous court filings from George Webb's mentally ill, wife-swapping, psychopathic, paperclip Nazi brother. Everything I say, they're trying to find something to, hang me up on and do exactly what some of these people on Twitter are doing. Oh, Jason's just lying to you and put this out there to get money. How is that even a business plan? How long could that possibly last? Look at the people who we have evidence are doing that. What happens to them, right? I've provided evidence and references to facts and past videos and events that cause me to believe that George Webb is a persistent liar and social engineer. Now, you might look at those same facts and you might think that I'm evaluating something incorrectly and I've come to a wrong conclusion, and you can disagree. I'm not on a campaign to tell people not to watch or listen to any particular other person. In fact, go listen. I think you should watch these people very closely and make your own determination about what you want to do relative to the information that they provide. And another thing that John Cullen will say is that even in the case of these limited hangout social engineers who we know are lying to us, they do need to win your confidence. It's a confidence man. They gain your confidence, and then when they have it and you trust them, then they fool you. So there is some amount of information that they need to give you that's going to be true. That's number one. There's also the possibility, they're humans and they make mistakes and things can slip out. And also, when their plans don't work according to plan, they need to improvise, and I find that they're not as good at that. So what am I talking about? This actually started with the Doug Mills photo, that guy who captured the image of Trump, with the bullet whizzing by. We see it there. He's a very well-known, Pulitzer Prize-winning muckety-muck with New York Times credentials and whatnot. So we've got Trump right up there, right? So this is as close as I could get to the same moment in time. I was trying to compare the video from Right Side Broadcast to this photo. We got a helicopter landing over there. I was trying to compare the photo that Doug Mills took. Oh, do they have some men beating up women in Paris?
From Poland, 23 years of age, finished 5th in this event in Tokyo. Jakob Heiherski.
Kind of fun, come and watch a big game and drink booze. But it started with the Doug Mills photo. And that photo has annoyed me from the first second I saw it, because I've done, not a lot, but I've done some high-speed photography, and the notion, I think you'd be almost as likely to catch a bullet with your hand as you would with the shutter of a camera at that speed. It's just so improbable that he would catch a bullet just, even if he's on a motor drive, even if that camera is shooting 30 frames per second, 100 frames per second. I really think you'd need that camera running in the range of 1,000 to 10,000 frames per second to capture a bullet like that. It's just, I don't know. Strange things happen with light and lenses and photography and physics, but the timing of catching the bullet, it just struck me as odd. So that's not proof of anything. It's not, and that's another important distinction, is the difference between evidence and proof. Another adage we're hearing a lot all over the place is that everything is evidence of something. And now that's true. I've never noticed this before. And what is this? It's like a scary Snackers. Oh, it's a pizza with a smile. That looked weird to me, but it was just also reminiscent of the shape of this weird, now essentially defunct building that people were jumping off of. But everything is evidence of something, but a video that you see on the internet that somebody uploaded to TikTok and somebody screen captured on their iPhone while they were having a bowel movement and then uploaded to their Twitter, and Twitter re-encoded it to their format that they host, and then somebody downloaded and emailed it to me. And I'm looking at something that's been copied, re-photographed, re-encoded, maybe a different resolution, maybe a different encoder, certainly a different bit rate. All of these things change elements of what you're looking at. And when we're looking for bullets flying in a frame, things that could be just a small number of pixels for an infinitesimal second. First of all, the capability of cameras like this to even pick that up and record it, let's assume you actually get a bullet in one frame of a video, going through this whole process of going from a phone, getting encoded in the phone, sent up to the internet, and you get it on your thing. If it's one frame of a bullet whizzing by in a blue sky, now this isn't true of the Doug photo because he's just snapping a still image, but in digital video, one of the things that a digital video compressor does is that it's aware that you're not just dealing with one image of a bullet, you're dealing with 30 images per second. So if we have one frame of a bullet, just as it whizzes by Trump's head, this is what I was looking for in the right side broadcasting video. And the reason I chose that video is that they control their media, and I had previously noticed that they actually live stream at a relatively high bit rate, 5 megabits per second. Okay, so the purpose of video compression is to actually make the video take up less space on a computer, on a hard drive, in the memory. Obviously, people know if you have a photograph that's 1 megabyte, you email that to somebody, no big deal. You start getting into 100 to 500 megabytes, you've experienced this. You go to download a big file, it takes a lot of time. Oh, there's the BlackRock office. I wonder if Crooks is in there making a commercial. It's just like it takes not that long to download a very small file and a long time to download a very big file. The goal of any given video compressor, if it wants to deliver you 30 frames in a second, is to compress the file size down to an amount of data that can be transmitted over whatever network you're using, wireless internet, in 1/30th of a second or less. Okay, so the Doug Mills photo, when he takes it in his camera, that's not a video camera, or even if it is, it's not recording in video mode. He's recording one still image, and I will make an assumption that he's a professional photographer. He's going to be capturing the image uncompressed. That is not unusual at all. It would be unusual for a professional photographer to only photograph things in a compressed format, because that means you're throwing away all the data that you captured the instant you push this and storing only a decimated, color-reduced, spatially compressed image. And that makes no sense because Doug Mills has a ton of dough and memory cards are cheap and you can fit like thousands of pictures on one. So it would make sense for a professional photographer to go there to the presidential rally. I mean, the guy is intending to sell these pictures to the New York Times and win Pulitzer Prizes. It's logical that a professional photographer would show up prepared to take the pictures in a professional manner. I mean, he's not going there with his 11-year-old Samsung Galaxy One or whatever Unsteady Dave was shooting, some kind of 11. He said it was 5 years old, LOL. My point is, the professional photographer is there with a $7,000 or $8,000 camera and the lens that he's selected for a very good reason. Sir, can I ask you how long you've been living in New York?
5 years.
Okay, you know bikes are illegal in parks, right?
Yeah.
So get the bike out of the park.
Okay, yeah, I'm going
Stop
to try.
riding on the sidewalk and
Okay.
stop riding in the park. It's logical to presume that the 5 years, so that guy, he came pretty coincident with the rise of COVID, didn't he? You better get that bike out of the park because I'm not going to be as polite next time. He parked it over there. It's logical to presume that the guy who goes and spends $7,000 or $8,000 and the lenses are probably $1,500, $2,000. This guy's spending a lot of money. He's not shooting a compressed format, and he's not saving memory card space by reducing the resolution. That camera records, 6,000 by 3,000 or some insanely high resolution. But we're not seeing that. Doug Mills released a good resolution image, but it's reduced. And that's not also unusual at all. Photographers generally do not release the raw camera files and the full resolution because they recognize that if you want to publish something on the New York Times website, well, I could give you a version of this 6,000 pixel wide image that's 8,000 pixels wide. And for putting it on a New York Times website, that's totally adequate. It's gonna look normal to you because you're not scrutinizing this thing for fast-moving half-inch objects. You're just like, oh yeah, there's Trump. Cool picture. Next article. And the photographers also know that if Trump says, I like that picture, I want to make a billboard and put it on Trump Tower, then Doug Mills would say, okay, I can license the photo to you, Donald Trump, for that unique application for $1 million. This is the way the professional photography and videography business works. This is part of the reason why I'm so pissed off at Patrick Bet-David and his asshole producer Mario, because they know this, right? Like, how much does it cost to hire an actor to be in your movie? Well, if you are trying to hire Jason Goodman and maybe $200 for the weekend, I don't know, $1,000. Tom Cruise, 20 million. So it varies depending on the application, what you're going to do with it. There's not some standard fee for paying an actor to be in a movie. It depends on a lot of things. Now, likewise, if some gun control charity called Doug Mills and said, hey, we want to use that Donald Trump thing to tell people not to buy guns. I don't know Doug Mills' politics. I presume if he's working for the New York Times, he's a lefty schmuck. And as I presume, he's presented us with, I don't know for a fact, this is my opinion based on the details I'm sharing with you here, but I believe he's presented us with a falsified photograph. And so maybe he would go to this charity and say, oh, I like the idea of getting people to not buy guns. So what I'll do is, we'll say I'm charging the charity $10,000 to license this photograph, but actually we're gonna do it as a $10,000 contribution so you guys can use the photograph for free because I like your charity and I want people to not buy guns. So you get what I'm saying. It's a very negotiation-rich environment. So it's not unusual for him to release a lower resolution version of the original picture, but what is unusual is to write articles in the New York Times about the EXIF data. This is metadata, information about the photograph, the camera, manufacturer, model, the lens focal length, all that stuff. We see it in the thumbnail here in the lower right, and it's talking about the shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second. And the camera aperture, the lens aperture, is set to f1.6. So people who know about photography, even pretty basic knowledge of photography, know that those settings do go together in that a low number for your f-stop equals a large opening of the iris. f11 is very small. f2 is bigger. f1.6 is called WFO, wide fucking open. Most people I know hate that and never want to use that because what it does is it's using the entire area of the lens to create the image, and it's generally considered that the centermost point of the lens in general is where the sharpest resolution is. Now there are creative reasons why you would choose to use that wide open setting and have the characteristics of a large aperture opening. Primarily it is done to control depth of field. And that is a term that refers to the depth in the z-axis from the camera to the subject in which things are in focus. The camera that we're looking at right now has tremendous depth of field. My nose is in focus, and this guy riding a bicycle on the sidewalk illegally is also in focus. He looks like a Venezuelan gang member to me. But the point is, This camera uses a very small imaging sensor, and so the relationship between the lens and the image sensor make it so that it's very difficult to achieve that soft focus. Like if this were a fashion shoot or something, maybe just my face would be in focus and New York City would be blurred. So it becomes this sort of suggestion of the background, but it gets the viewer to focus their attention on the subject. And it's a commonly used photographic technique, but it doesn't make sense to do it at a live event. Lee was commenting yesterday that he would have used a zoom lens. I agree with Lee. I like the flexibility of being able to select the focal length, and I find there are a number of high-quality zoom lenses that deliver excellent resolution and quality. So I like having the creative flexibility of a zoom lens to change the focal length. But I just don't deny that I might even be in the minority. Lee and I might be in the minority, and particularly older photographers and guys who consider themselves artistes, undoubtedly like this lying, I suspect, schmuck, Doug Mills, is one of these guys who I would presume doesn't even want to see a zoom lens anywhere near the kit. Doesn't, you can't question his aperture settings even though we're outside and it's broad daylight. So the other thing that changing that opening on the camera does is it controls the amount of light hitting the photosensitive sensor. So there's a number of ways that you can control that, and depending on the camera you have, you may have more or less. Fewer? There's less options on Unsteady Dave's 2016 Galaxy, Samsung, whatever. There's fewer options on there for him to control exposure manually and lens settings than there are on an $8,000 Doug Mills giant Sony camera. And by the way, that's part of the reason it's so expensive. Maybe the Samsung thing will get you 80% of the way there for 80% of the photography that you're going to need for 10% of the price. But it's that extra little bit that makes it professional and costs a ton of money. My point is, if Doug Mills said, well, for some reason that Jason doesn't understand because he's a simpleton and he's not an artiste and he's making images with a cell phone and I'm an expert with an $8,000 camera and a lot of Pulitzer Prizes, he might have some great explanation as to why he would choose to shoot a distant subject on a 24mm lens, which is a wide angle, and use a 1/8,000th of a second shutter to get to that super wide open aperture. It just makes no sense at all. Because also, if you say, well, no, he wanted soft background and he's a photographer and you don't know what you're doing and blah, 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 blah. But the point is, look at the photo in the upper right-hand corner. What is he softening in the background? There is no background. It's a solid blue sky. There's nothing, you wouldn't be able to tell if that was in focus or out. So why choose that shutter setting? Well, maybe it doesn't matter, you would say, Jason, it's just the way he had it set. But that also doesn't make sense in the context of what I understand about most professional photographers, because they don't just arbitrarily set their camera and hope they get a good result. You're going to a Trump campaign event and you might be thinking, well, anything could happen here, so I want to make sure I don't accidentally miss focusing on the president. And remember, the depth of field is a three-dimensional, it's a measurement from the front of the camera to here. So let's say this is 6 feet away from the tip of my nose, and I focus to 8 feet back here. My face is out of focus and something on the wall over there is in. If I can stop down my lens to create larger depth of field, I might now have focus from an inch away from the camera to a mile, and then I don't have to worry about a little bit, I'm not going to be out of focus. And it would seem to me that when you're at the rally with Donald Trump, he's not, doing something incredibly high speed that you would need to freeze the action. Is this a Z06 or is this a regular C8? Should have got the Z06. If you were going to a shooting competition or a tennis game where you wanted, dramatic shots of freezing the fast-moving tennis action and you don't want motion blur, then I could see, but even 8,000, that's like for stopping the motion of a machine. I'm not sure that there's any movement that a human could make. We could test this. You could photograph someone repeating some action in 1/1000th of a second, 1/2000th, 3,000, 4,000th. I have a feeling for most people standing at a podium talking, a photograph taken at 1/8000th of a second versus 1/4,000th of a second, or even 1/1000th of a second, I just don't think you are going to perceive any difference at all. And so what that means is the shutter speed isn't changing the photo. If I went to the tennis match and set the shutter speed to 1/100th of a second, you get a very smeary tennis racket. If I change it to 1/1000th, the racket looks frozen with the ball in midair. You're not going to notice that kind of a difference with Trump standing there talking. So that setting doesn't make sense. And not every setting that the guy selects has to make sense to me or be approved by me. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people generally, their behavior is motivated by logic. And when we're not talking about, how this guy acts about his girlfriend or whether he thinks a movie is funny or a meal is delicious, this is not really subjective. Professionals in any area, they don't just do random things that don't make sense. I mean, if somebody went for valve replacement surgery and the doctor put a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in there, that's unexpected. You would not anticipate that a cardiac surgeon would use Schmucker's products to repair, you get what I'm saying. So we have all these anomalous settings, and then there's something else that we need to consider, because with digital photography, we've introduced a new way for the photographer to choose a setting that controls the amount of light that's recorded in the image. Back in the day, when I first started in photography, you would load film into a camera. People remember that who are over maybe 40 at this point. And if you were going somewhere at night or interior, you could choose film that was more sensitive. 400 ISO, 500 ISO, 800 ISO. You could choose photosensitive film. And the difference between 400 ISO film and 800 ISO film is that 800 ISO film is twice as sensitive to light. And you might say, well, gee, that's great. Why not use that all the time? And the reason is, it gives you images that are less sharp because the grain of the film is more visible. Now, we're getting very deep into technicalities here, but I think that has to do with the surface area of the photosensitive chemicals. On a strip of film, you've got this slop that was invented by, I guess, George Eastman, and I don't remember who invented photographic emulsion, but the point is it's got silver halide in there and all kinds of things. And these are physical, the smaller it is, maybe the sharper your image will look, but maybe the less surface area it has to react with light. I would have to guess that it has to do with that, but in an electronic sensor, it's different. It's one sensor. You're not changing the sensor. If it's 1990 and I load my camera with 25 ISO film and I take 12 pictures and there's still 24 left on there, here's a Lamborghini SUV, and then I go somewhere at night, I'm stuck. I'm either wasting the rest of that film or I'm photographing in the dark with film that's not very light sensitive. So one of the advantages of digital photography is that you can select the ISO, the sensitivity setting, and you can do that. You can change it from photo to photo. You could shoot the first photo at 100 ISO and then switch to 12,000 ISO. That's the other thing, is that these digital sensors, they achieve this sensitivity by increasing the signal or gain or suppressing. It has to do with the electronic signal coming from the thing, and you can also increase the noise. As you boost the signal, you get more noise. So still, in electronic photography, if you boost that setting, the sensitivity way high, you're introducing more noise. So for me, and most professional photographers, one of the reasons you want an expensive Sony camera like that is that they can go down to very, very low ISO settings and very high, sometimes 256,000 ISO. Modern digital cameras, you've probably experienced this yourself. They can see things in rooms, certainly my eyes can't. And that's how night vision and things like that work. They're able to really super amplify the signal coming off of a digital sensor. But when you see night vision, it looks grainy and noisy and bad. So the one setting, this is the thing. So this goes to people like, what the hell is Jason talking about? He's off on a tangent. But it's got to do with a hunch, which is not evidence. Evidence leads and proof. Okay? A hunch is, I look at the Doug Mills photo the second it's published, and I say to myself, not only how the hell did this guy capture a bullet in flight, how is it so perfect that it's that photo tells the story? Trump was missed. Ooh, that photo might have been a steganographic message, because that one image tells you 1,000 words. A bullet was fired, but here it is going past his head and he's still talking. Wow! I just thought of that right now. We'll talk about the importance of that in a minute, but the probability of capturing that bullet on a 24mm lens, get a 15mm lens, it's just, you're not gonna do it. I'm sorry. It's so improbable, it's almost just even difficult to contemplate, but setting aside the fact that it's tickling the border of impossible that he would even capture it, now you've captured it in such a way that the composition of the photograph is absolutely perfect. It's not coming in before Trump where we don't know if it's hit yet or not. It's not way off. Oh, we need this huge wide, 24mm wide frame to see where's the bullet. It just happened to be perfect in its composition. See, so now again, the fact that the bullet did that, and this realization that that image tells 1,000 words of somebody shot at Trump and missed, that if you were somewhere and needed to let somebody know in a quick hurry in a minute, they see that and they know what's up. But it could have been in front, it could have been behind. So that's improbable. But this is all hunch. So that makes me look at the photograph and just say to myself, I don't believe that. I don't have evidence to prove that it's falsified. But I just cannot imagine an organic scenario where that would happen. So the other thing that I found quite strange is all these articles that have been written about that. Now you might say, oh, but it's such an historic photograph that of course they're going to write articles about it. Charles would hate that, but I actually think I wouldn't hang it in my home or anything, but I believe that is a skillfully executed design. It's interesting from a graffiti art standpoint, and painting it on a garbage container or whatever makes it a little bit less offensive, perhaps. Hey, Josh, isn't this guy, that guy's on Epoch Times, isn't he? Now he's speeding up. Hey, Josh, you're on the Epoch Times, aren't you? You're from the Epoch Times?
Yeah.
Good to meet you, Jason Goodman.
Hey, nice to meet you.
What do you think about the Donald Trump assassination? Real or Secret Service trying to kill him? I mean, crooks, all that stuff?
I mean, I think at the very least there were security loopholes, at the very least, but I do think someone tried to kill him, definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Have you been watching Crowdsource the Truth or following I Am John Cullen on Twitter?
I have.
Great, excellent. Well, I'm Jason, you're on Crowdsource the Truth.
Nice.
Good to meet you, man. Take care. How can people watch your show?
Crossroads at Epic Times, so Crossroads Josh. And I've been focused a lot on China news lately, so.
I've seen that. Thanks for stopping. Good to see you, man. I appreciate your reporting. Take care. So there we go. He wasn't avoiding me. He had his headphones in and couldn't hear me. I like that guy. He's done some good shows. Anyway, where was I? punches, probability. So I just looked at the photo and said, this doesn't seem realistic to me. And then I was reading this New York Times article where they published all of his metadata, his EXIF data about the photo. Now, the thing that I just realized, because I've been scrutinizing this basically since the first day that it came out, and I didn't realize what I'm about to tell you. It's telling us that it's f1.6, 1/1000. He had to say that. Whatever the settings actually were, he had to give you f1.6 to explain the fact that it's captured at 1/8000th of a setting, because 1/8000th of a second is the fastest setting that camera's shutter offers. So even the person with the most basic knowledge of photography would say, wait a minute, you can't capture a supersonic bullet with a regular camera. You need some kind of crazy scientific, military, something or other. And they said, no, 1/8000th of a second, and this I agree with, is plausibly sufficient. We'd have to test to see, but on its face, it appears like a sufficient duration to freeze the time of the bullet. So they have to have that parameter. Everybody's going to see and scrutinize that. So then the next question, any photographer would say, well, if you're out there, it's a very, very small amount of time for the image to be exposed. You're not going to get a lot of light on that sensor. So to compensate, logically, he's got to open up the lens, allow as much light in as possible. And that right there, I say, is the trick. That's the magical trick. Here's my f-stop. Here's my shutter speed. Don't pay attention to the ISO over here. Because I noticed this morning, I've just been contemplating this and discussing it with my professional photographer friends, all of which agree with me. And just, getting back to all this bullet spotting that we've been doing, I was brought back to this. And I wanted to compare the Right Side Broadcasting Network video to this image, because so many people were going through that Fox video from James Copenhaver, and John found some anomaly there that he believed was a bullet, and I felt he might be right. We could be wrong. The other reason I want to take this video is that I kind of want to reset the expectation, and also how I, and hopefully other guests who come on Crowdsource the Truth, will approach this information. I try to, as much as possible, tell people when I'm speculating, tell people that these are my opinions, that you might form another conclusion. And by the way, when I say that too often, people say, why do you always talk like that? And then when I don't say it, people say, oh, Jason's putting out stuff like it's true. So it's one of these things where maybe you just can't satisfy everyone, but yeah, that ISO is not listed. Now, somebody said he had it set to 80. I have not been able to see any New York Times article. 80 is low, but that camera goes down to 50. And, maybe you wouldn't need it at 50. I mean, that's the thing. My point is, why not set, it doesn't make sense to me that the guy is standing there with 1/8000th of a second set and ready to go to take a picture, unless he's expecting a high-speed event. That's the only reason. Even setting the shutter to 1/1000th in that scenario makes no sense, and every photographer agrees with me. I think you'd use 1/125th of a second as your starting point. That's basically considered a natural speed to stop human action. Higher than that, you start getting to maybe reduced motion blur, which can look a bit unnatural. Lower than that, you start getting to smear, and camera shake can affect focus. So there's certain things that people generally do when they're prepared for some unexpected event. These kind of extreme 8000 and f1.6, that's like in studio stuff where you're controlling the event. You control the light, you control when the bullet fires, you control the apparatus, that it's all set up. You know, when you're outside and clouds could come over and reduce the lighting situation, or Trump could move, he could go further away or come closer, or some action could happen to your right that you're gonna wanna start photoing. Somebody in the crowd does something. You kind of want to be a little more flexible than being like all the way at the ends of the extreme settings on this camera that don't make sense for what he's actually there to photograph. And by leaving out the ISO, giving us all this detail about the metadata of the photo, but leaving out that one, it's super suspicious. So let's go to the right side broadcasting video now, because that's really where the mistake came. But see, all this crapping around with the Doug Mills photo, I didn't just decide, oh, I'm gonna pretend there's a bullet flying and somehow that'll make money. People will click on that. First of all, that's not the way I think, because the way I think is, I'll do that, and if I know it's wrong, obviously other people will find that pretty quickly, and then I'll be proven wrong. And if I have a history of putting out things that are wrong, nobody will watch and my show will go away and I won't make money. I think people who watch and observe understand that my business model for the past 7 years has been to produce the highest quality videos and provide the best information I'm able, so that people like the show and want to watch it and value it. And the people that do value this show become sponsors. They go to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. That's the most economical way to sponsor the show. It's only $3. Do people really think I'm trying to take over the world $3 at a time? I'm trying to make this a sustainable business that I can do while keeping it as economical as possible for everybody to subscribe. If you want to see the Doobie Brothers and Steve Winwood, I wonder how many of them are actually still alive. Steve Winwood is good. Oh, look, there's Michael McDonald. That would be good, actually. Oh, Steve Winwood playing with the Doobie Brothers. That sounds pretty good, actually. Anyway, people can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. See, the people that I see that appear to be just putting things out for clicks are like that MJ Truth Ultra. Instead of retweeting a tweet of mine that contains a video that I've created, that dude will rip the video, copy it from my tweet with a tool, re-encoding it, transcoding it, harming the quality. Could be fine, because nobody's trying to find bullets flying in there, but that's what it does. What it also does is it doesn't retweet people. It doesn't build up my Twitter account by having people say, hey, that's an interesting tweet, let's see what else this guy is talking about. It just drives the clicks and the views to his monetized, gigantic Twitter account from my video that I made. I stayed up until 3 in the morning making. This guy just rips it, puts it. That's somebody who's just tweeting out stuff for clicks and money, and then when I called him out, he blocked me. Okay, so what happened to me earlier is I put out this tweet. I'm not gonna play the video, but I found in the Right Side Broadcasting Network what I thought were bullets flying. And by the way, I went right to the part where Trump says, look at our country, then something happened with Joe Biden, the worst president. So this is just like the right in the section where the bullets start flying, and there's a lot of pops going off. So where the pops are happening, I'm looking around to see, do we have corresponding bullets flying? Because my buddy John Cullen told me that's a way to find out where they are. And then so after I thought I had some bullets, I posted it, and Leonard there, he said 100%, that's a reflection in sunglasses. So okay, I mean, my first reaction, I was like, 100%, nothing is 100%. How does this guy know it's 100%? Somebody might even argue that even speaking in absolutes and saying, oh, it's 100%, that was an error, because there's no way that it's 100%. But turns out he was right. In my opinion, I could still be wrong, but I do believe he was correct, because he said it's a woman's glasses reflecting behind there. Now here's the reason why going to the Right Side Broadcasting video is so important. The reason I did that was, what an adorable dog. Not just because They were so well positioned right in front of Trump. Although that was one reason, that's part of the quality. They've got a good, clear shot, centered up on the primary subject. They're not off in the bleachers, zoomed in from a million miles away. But also, I had noticed Right Side Broadcasting puts out their live streams at 5 megabits per second, which is relatively high. I do 3.5 because I don't want to stress out your computer. There's a lot of people watching on older computers, slower internet connections, and also I'm storing all these videos that I create. So they're maybe 40% smaller to store when I go at 3.5 megabits versus 5. And also walking around New York City, people have noticed sometimes I get disconnected. If I'm trying to jam more data through that skinny pipe, it's more likely that the video will disconnect from the network by a saturation problem. So having a lower bit rate makes sense for this. There's a lot of things that I'm thinking about as a professional photographer, content creator, videographer, stereographer, whatever I might be doing in the moment. There are a lot of technical things spinning around in my mind that determine how I set all of this stuff, and I know I make it look easy, but it's not. And so I'm sure Doug Mills is doing all that same. And that's, you might say, oh, well, why'd they do that? It's a good question. I mean, that's not an out of the question resolution and frame rate to use. I've noticed that younger content creators, people in their 20s and 30s, seem to prefer that higher frame rate setting. That gives you more temporal information. You go look at the Zapruder film. That was shot, I think, on an 8mm format or a 16mm format that I believe was 18 frames per second. Maybe that was 16. Because again, these were consumer formats in the 1960s, and if 1,000 feet of film is $20, you run it at 24 frames per second, you get, I don't even remember, 3 minutes, whatever it is, 7 minutes. But if you reduce that to 18, you're getting 50% more time. It's a form of compression. We can fit more information in the same space by taking less samples, but the trade-off, of course, is that the motion doesn't look realistic. The Zapruder film, it's herky-jerky, it looks like an old movie, but at 60 frames per second, you get very, very fluid movement, and it's just, for live streaming, I would call that a personal preference, depending on the person making the video. I don't like it. I'm more of a filmmaker. I'm an old school guy. I frankly would shoot a lot of things. When you see interviews with Ned, what was his name who was running for Congress? How can I forget his name? The guy who Jeremy Oliver was at his house. Anyway, Charles and I went and interviewed that guy. When I do those kind of sit-down interviews, I use 24 frames per second because it gives it a more cinematic look in my view. And with the cameras that I use there, I can't shoot uncompressed. I've got 120 megabit ceiling, and so if I shoot 24 frames instead of 30, every single image is getting more of that data, so each individual image looks better, and that's why I choose to do that. And those don't go out live. By the time they get compressed and sent out to you guys at 3 megabits, because it started so high quality, it looks better. That's another good example of why I've been telling people we can't call this Unsteady Dave and all these other super decimated videos. They're not evidence. They are not evidence. Forgive me, John Cullen would say everything is evidence of something. Those videos are arguably evidence that those people were there, evidence that they recorded a video, evidence that they saw something, evidence that it's been transcoded 3 times and that it's had text put over it, evidence that somebody uploaded something to Twitter. Yes, it is evidence. It is evidence. But what I'm saying is that is not a piece of evidence that really could ever be authenticated, because let's say in our ultimate dreams, everything goes the way we want. Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson and Eli Crane and whoever else is looking into this whole thing, they say, you know what? Cullen and Goodman and all of these people and Lee Stranahan and everybody who's looking at this, We want you guys to come and like investigate with us in Congress, and then we're going to take your information that you develop and we're going to have indictments and question people, and you guys can help us develop the questions, and we're going to bring in Agent Sketchy. This would be a dream come true. If the information that we are putting out gets somebody who's investigating this, get the fuck out of here, you moron. You get somebody to investigate this who finds out what that guy's name is and starts questioning him with some of the information that we've developed, and get him arrested if that's the person who was shooting at Trump and killed Corey Comparatori. That's the point of doing this. I'm not trying to put out wrong information to get money. That's just stupid and illogical. And frankly, I hope when people see a tweet of mine with some unknown Twitter account that just got created a month ago to troll me that says, oh, Jason's putting out junk, everybody should block him or whatever, scrutinize that account and ask, why are they saying that? Is it because they're a social engineer who wants to disrupt what we're trying to do here? I don't know, but it's very strange. And so the other reason I wanted to make this video is because I didn't want to take this errant tweet down. I've just let everybody know that it's a mistake. I've called for a community note. I've pinned the correction to the top there because I'm hopeful that people will understand the process and see it. Now, so the other thing I wanted to address is why I was looking there, because the hunch is we've got multiple shooters. The eyewitness MAGA hat woman said that. She even said the police told them to leave because the police said they had reason to believe there could be multiple shooters. So some evidence that people there on the ground, there was someone in the water tower, she said, they were shooting to the left, they were shooting to the right. Sounds like evidence that people, not conspiracy theorists, police and military snipers and people with like tactical, know a lot more about guns and where bullets are coming from than I do, are there looking around. So we have evidence that at least somebody thought there was multiple shooters. So looking for those bullets is not, oh, come on, let's stop anybody putting out this kind of nonsense. We have a hunch. We don't have evidence, we're looking for evidence, or we have bad evidence, or we have videos that contain inconclusive evidence. So see, the thing I was thinking was the high bit rate of the right side broadcasting videos make it less likely that intermittent, quickly appear and disappear. If you have one frame of a tiny little bullet in a video, as your video encoder goes through and says, here's frame 1, here's frame 2, here's frame 3, blue sky, bullet, that kid needs a yelling at. Look at this idiot kid. How long until he really hurts somebody? Grinding it out on the damn skateboard. One bullet, one frame. Video encoder says, oh, we got blue sky all in this whole area. Bip, bullet goes by. Even if the camera records it, it's more likely that the video encoder will just say, well, that's just one frame of a tiny little area, and the average of this whole area is this color. Okay, so we're going to just forget about that bullet because putting different pixels there right now will take more memory and more storage, and we're going to eliminate that. So there's things that happen in the process of recording digital video that change the contents of what's in there. And the more times you run a digital video through that process, you screen capture it, you upload it, you DM it, you put it on Twitter, somebody sees it on Twitter and puts it on TikTok. Every single one of those things is transcoding. When you send it to another website, they're transcoding it before they play it on their website. They don't know if you know what you're doing. They don't want some video that you play to jam up their website. They've decided this is the way we're going to encode videos on Twitter, and they're going to go to this playback server, and that's how it's going to work. So this is why when someone sees a video that they believe has evidence of something in it, that is a hunch. That is a lead. It's not evidence. It gives you a good place to look. So the first thing I would recommend for people to consider in that situation is try to find the original uploader. And this is another reason why I was so unhappy with Unsteady Dave. because John was getting all excited about that video, and I said, look, I hear you, that is super interesting. In particular, we've got muzzle flashes coming out the window. Okay, that's interesting. But what I'm saying is, okay, let's get to the original video so we can make sure that this isn't somebody adding that, some kind of mistake, some kind of trick, something that we don't yet understand. And that's why I was interacting with Unsteady Dave. And his response, if he had said to me, I can't give you the original video because the cops took my phone and all they gave me was this memory stick with the contents of the phone, and when they gave it to me, that video wasn't there, or something like that. If he had said that, I would have said, wow, that's believable. And a good reason why he can't give me the phone, or not the phone, can't give me the video. That would be plausible, sensible, and that would send us in another direction. Why did the cops do that? Now, he didn't say that, though. He said the cops took the phone and gave it back to him, and now he's uploading the video. So ostensibly that means the cops looked at the phone and said, there's nothing here, you can have it. Or they got whatever evidence. See, here's the other crazy part, is that if whoever is investigating this were actually cops, they wouldn't limit what you could do with the evidence. Maybe they would. They'd say, oh, well, the people we're looking for. I'm not a cop, so I can't speak about how police investigations run, and based on my interactions with the police, just like when I approach 3D, however they're doing it, it is not the right way to do. But what he said was he can't give me the video because he's going to make a documentary, and then after the documentary, he'll give it to me. That didn't make sense. To me, it wasn't plausible. Maybe he wants to make a documentary, but I've made a lot of documentaries, and I've dealt with Discovery Channel and National Geographic and Sony and different people who make documentaries, and I just don't think this kid is the most interesting aspect of the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Perhaps he'll participate in a documentary and that footage will be used, but if that's going to happen, whoever's going to do that isn't going to just take a public domain version of it. And my point is, it seemed to me that he was lying. And then even now that there have been several days where multiple people have been saying, hey, you know what? Some people are going to disagree. Some people are going to agree. Some people say Jason is right. This is evidence in a crime that hasn't yet been solved, and you have something that could help find a murderer. You sort of have a moral, and maybe even the legal obligation might have been taken care of by giving it to the cops, and they have it. But a lot of people feel that the cops aren't going to do an adequate job, and that makes it a moral imperative for him to release that footage publicly so that everybody can see it. Go give it to Chris Martin, let him put something out. I just want to see what's actually recorded on the thing. So when I went to the Right Side Broadcasting video, that's still not the camera original. I've been trying to contact them and asking them if they'll give that to me, because a lot of those big broadcast cameras that people use for live streaming also have very large internal memory cards and can record 150 megabits. So 30 times the information that we're getting on YouTube could be sitting on a server, on a hard drive, in a vault somewhere at Right Side Broadcasting Network right now. Maybe a 150 megabit version, you might be able to see movement on the top of the tower. You might be able to zoom in enough that it's not super crunched out and wiggling and noisy and blurry. You might say, holy cow, that is a clearly discernible doop. Guy sticks his head out, goes back in, guns, who knows what we would see. But the point is, we can't just go to the crappiest video available and say, oh, there's evidence. So I admit I should have been more cautious with my language when I put the thing out there, to not make it appear to other people that this was a definitive statement that these are bullets. But because we hear bullets, we know bullets were fired at Donald Trump, it's not crazy to go looking around in the frame around Donald Trump's head at the point in an audio waveform where we hear a sharp spike that's not somebody talking, not the crowd. Sounds like guns are being fired. Where are the bullets? So I'm not like searching for some needle in the haystack or something that isn't going to be there. And in some regards, it's an understandable mistake. But when Leonard pointed out to me that it was a reflection in the sunglasses, I checked that, and I determined that he was correct. First of all, because I looked at the motion of the woman wearing the sunglasses, and he seemed correct. But then I couldn't reconcile in my mind, because I was trying to figure out if the bullet that Doug Mills captured would also have been captured by Brightside Broadcasting, and Leonard's appropriate criticism, politely put, totally appropriate and helpful. Thank you. I'm serious. I thank Leonard for doing that. John and I are not blocking people for criticizing us. We're blocking people for being jerks or social engineers. Leonard didn't get blocked. I pinned his tweet because I want everybody to know that the earlier tweet was incorrect. I hope that results in more people. You follow me at JG_CSCT, CSTT. I just hope this gets more people following Leonard Lambert, because he's an astute person on Twitter. So if more people follow him, more information will flow to him. He can evaluate it and contribute and help us learn. So what did Leonard's accurate point cause me to realize? Well, it caused me to dive back into what I was looking at, research it further, and understand how I made that mistake, and to now that my hunch was this guy's correct, because it does look like that woman is leaning forward. What else in this video could tell me that I'm wrong? And I put this into the thumbnail. Look at Donald Trump's right hand. It's moving. Okay, now motion video, that uses normally a shutter angle, a shutter speed. I'm confusing my motion picture shutters with still shutters, but you're normally getting an exposure time of approximately 1/60th of a second, or 1/120th of a second if you're shooting at 60 frames per second. What I'm getting at is there is a degree of motion, like when you freeze a video, you'll notice the motion looks blurrier than it does if you just snap a picture of the person. That's because the shutter is 1/60th of a second in a normal television broadcast. You get kind of a lot of smear. But because the thing is moving, that smear looks more like natural motion than a sequence of sharp still pictures. That creates a stroboscopic effect that confuses the mind. All of these things that we're looking at on televisions and phones and computers, they're illusions that pertain to persistence of vision and other properties of human vision. See, this is all the stuff that my mentor, another friend who I'm so sad is dead, John Merritt, was an expert in the human factors of visual perception. In fact, that was the course that he taught that I first took, all about stereoscopic 3D. But this was for scientists. I was the only person making movies that went to that. It was like me and a bunch of like Korean nerds who were, taking this like super, just like no women in that, not a one. But John was a fantastic guy, and that is the guy who, he got his start analyzing satellite photos for the military, and he figured out a way to do not photogrammetry, but to create hyperstereoscopic images. So depending on where the satellite was in the sky and the angle that it was photographing these Russian missile sites that were covered with this kind of like fabric that looks like camouflage leaves. So in a 2D photograph, you just look like you're looking at the trees and the forest, but in his hyper stereo 3D photographs, you could see the relief, the difference in height between this camouflage tarp and the trees underneath it. And so he would tell me all these stories, and I was like, John, while he was alive, I'm talking about John Merritt, not John Cullen, my deceased friend who was a scientist that reminds me of what I was hearing about Dr. Preston, the guy who started American Glass Research. But I asked him one time, John, are you in the CIA? And he just laughed. And I noted that he didn't answer. And at his funeral, his wife revealed that she had told him the night he died that he was. So that's interesting because this guy was never trying to trip me up or foul me up, or he wasn't trying to get 21st Century 3D put out of business. He would come to New York and sit with us while we were building the 3D camera just because he thought it was a delightful and exciting project. I think I actually have a video of that 3D camera in here. I wanted to show it to people. Oh, this was, I was talking about David Hawkins' reverse engineering. To make this 3D camera, we had to reverse engineer Panasonic DVX100 cameras. You see that Panasonic camera there? This is two DVX100s that we basically sawed in half, took out the digital video tape recorder, linked these things up. An electronic engineer designed a printed circuit board that linked the timing circuitry of the two cameras together. And then I hired a design engineer who created the metal box and machined all that stuff and put all this stuff in there and made it work. But we had to reverse engineer that camera, and it's very difficult when you don't know how something works to figure out how it works. And that's what we're trying to do here. We didn't plan this crime. We don't know who did this crime. We have certain evidence. We don't have the full Panasonic DVX100 camera, nor the service manual that included all the schematics where, you know, I open up a Panasonic camera and say, what the hell am I looking at? But I get an engineer and I show him the schematic and he says, there's the oscillator chip. We just need to cut the ground line on that, run a wire from here to this, run this to that. That guy knew what to do, you know? So there's things that you can get that will inform you as to what the hell is going on. And that's why I was looking around in that image. I'm doubting this Doug Mills photo. It just doesn't seem like it could be taken in the way that he tells us it was taken. Now, he's a busy, fancy guy who doesn't need to pay attention to me. So me tweeting at him and saying, hey, Doug Mills, why does your metadata say that you took this photo at a resolution that the Sony camera doesn't even operate at? To me, that's a tell, right? When you're sitting at the poker table and somebody does something that just makes you think that guy looks nervous like he's going to lose this hand, that's a tell. They've just done something that gives away the lie. In the case of, is this video transcoded or not? Well, when you see it says, you know, at Unsteady Dave or whatever the hell his Twitter handle is, obviously he's laid graphics over it. That wasn't, you didn't have a sign saying Unsteady Dave flying around the farm there. He's added that. The video's been manipulated. So now that we know that it's been manipulated, what else has been manipulated about it? I have the same question for Doug Mills. Now that we know that you've got manipulated metadata that shows us a resolution that this thing wasn't taken at, what else have you manipulated about the metadata and why? When's the last time you saw an interview with a photographer about what f-stop and shutter setting and ISO? It's weird. Granted, it's an extraordinary photograph, and so knowing things about it, that's the plausible deniability. But you know what? If Doug Mills said, hey, Goodman's an idiot, here's the raw file, and what that is an uncompressed, directly the data recorded from the camera sensor before it leaves the camera and goes into Photoshop or Lightroom or wherever you can add a bullet, that raw file will tell us what the camera recorded. And if he doesn't want to give us that for copyright reasons, he wants to sell it to a billboard to Donald Trump, just show us the unmolested metadata with the original. But now I'm not going to trust him if he shows us the metadata because he's changed it once. He's just going to change it again. So this is what I'm asking people for. I'm trying to get the original camera recordings for all of this stuff. The thing that Fox News put up there, that could be manipulated, that could be a reflection, that could be a bug or a bird or something flying by, that could be an anomaly in the camera sensor. It could be anything. To me, it does look like a person getting shot, but that introduces all kinds of other confusing anomalies. We go to David Hawkins' examination of the narrative. If that's a person getting shot in the face on the roof while Donald Trump is still talking, how the hell do we explain the eyewitnesses on Steady Dave's video that say, I just saw him take the guy out? How do we explain that? Well, I don't know. We got to look at it a bit more. What a beautiful little dog. I would say that young woman and that dog go together well. Petite, pretty. Anyway, what if that whole entire Unsteady Dave video is a piece of bullshit? What if they were told to say things on the video that was going to be given to us as evidence? I forgot to say this. A lot of people have been noticing that for the first 2 weeks, all these videos that we got, super low res. Worse than videos I was shooting for Crowdsource the Truth 7 years ago. Maybe not, maybe just as bad. Maybe people don't upgrade their phones as much as I do in Butler, PA. I don't know, but it's weird to me that we've got so many 4K 60p videos coming out now. Like a few days ago, I started seeing these. People leaving the venue, 4K, 60 frames. We've got Mia Cops. She was shooting HD, hasn't transcoded, hasn't done all that stuff. By the way, this is another reason why I wanted to make this video. Mia Cops and Eric DeFelice will be joining myself and John Cullen tonight for, I think, the first interview they've given since the event. I'm not sure, I'll ask them that, but certainly eyewitness to the event. And remember, Eric DeFelice is the guy who was arrested by Agent Dirty Sanchez. So we got a lot to ask them, but tune in tonight. If you're not already a sponsor, get onto subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. The real deal is on odyssey.com. Same content, but for only $3 a month plus a 58-cent Odyssey fee, you get access to all the sponsor exclusive content. Plus, Odyssey has the largest library of legacy Crowdsource the Truth content. Even for free subscribers, you can subscribe to Odyssey for free and become a member for as little as $3 to access all the content. But we'll be on there tonight at 7:30 with Mia and Eric. And you know, Mia was rolling HD on her iPhone, I guess. Maybe a Samsung, but it looks sharp, it looks high quality. Why was nobody around that building running a phone less than 5 years old at a resolution that doesn't look like crap? Plus, we now know Agent Sketchy, he's around the building right after the shooting collecting cell phones. And he doesn't say, Unsteady Dave, you're an eyewitness. Be very careful, we need to take your cell phone, don't record anything else on it, don't turn it off, don't lose the battery, just whatever. If this is evidence that we want, you would think there'd be an organized police effort to collect the evidence. But what we see on Dave's video is Agent Sketchy kicking the phone or stomping on it. We see it looking up at him from the ground and it goes flying. Does that sound like somebody who is engaged in a careful and organized police effort to gather evidence? Or does that sound like somebody who wants to destroy evidence? Sounds to me like somebody who wants to destroy evidence. And I got a lot of questions about Agent Sketchy. That's my neighbor's dogs. Did Sketchy tell these people to do various things and say various things on video? Did they record stuff that was intended to be released, like that TMZ video? How do we know that the sound from that video goes with that video? How do we know that they didn't just record somebody walking around on that roof the day before, the previous week, whatever, and release that now and say, this guy is walking all around and get people yelling? How many people actually saw the guy get shot? I want to know. Where's a camera? I mean, if people are yelling for 20 minutes that there's a guy on the roof and you got 1,000 people with cameras, not one of them has the telescopic Samsung lens that they're pointing at the roof and get a clear picture of that guy. I'm sorry, this whole thing stinks. So I agree with John Cullen. If we don't have some false positives, we're not looking hard enough. And we got to keep checking each other. So thank you, Leonard, for pointing out that that was a mistake. I admit, I don't want to delete it because then I'm concerned that people will say, oh, Jason's trying to hide this and pretend it never happened. I want to publicize it more, that we've discovered it's a mistake, and share these details so that when you're looking at stuff on the internet, you can say, now what was Jason saying about shutter speed and frame rates and recompressing and transcoding? I realize this is complicated stuff. I'm not trying to make everybody a video expert, but I want people to have healthy skepticism. This all came up going back to videos from 9/11. We got a lot of stuff to look at, everybody. Stay with us tonight. Become a sponsor on the show.